The weekend, good weather, sunshine. It's time to smoke some meat. What's the pinnacle of smoked meat? It's brisket, except we didn't get one. I don't know why we didn't think about that. But what we're gonna do instead is some tri-tip. Brisket's one of those cuts where if you mess it up, it's horrible. And everyone knows that because all of us have cooked a bad brisket. So let's just mess up a tri-tip instead. How about that? So tri-tip comes from right here in the bottom sirloin. She's gonna give us a couple things on that location. It's got great marbling and flavor because we're right here next to the flank. We're also gonna get nice texture and a lot of tenderness because we're there in the sirloin. Back in the 50s, tri-tip got immensely popular on the West Coast because it's a fairly easy cut to cook as long as you do it properly. Once you go past medium though, it gets pretty tough. One of the things we figured out here at Grillslingers is that if you treat this like a brisket and take it up into the 200s, what you're gonna get is a really nice bark on the outside and you're gonna get a nice tender cut that you really can't mess up. On top of all that, a tri-tip only costs about $20 to $30 as opposed to a brisket that if you're lucky to find one here in California, it's gonna cost you $50 or more. So let's jump right in. Let's take a look at how to actually trim that tri-tip. You're gonna find tri-tip one of two ways. You're gonna find it trim, and typically that's gonna be around 2 to 3 pounds, or you're gonna find it untrimmed in the 4 to 5 pound range. Or you're gonna be like me, find yourself unlucky at Vaughn's, and you're gonna find an untrimmed one in the 3 pound range. What we're gonna start off with, we're gonna look here on the fat cap. This fat cap is usually about a 1/2 inch. Now, if you're working on a brisket, that's okay. But on a tri-tip, you wanna take it down to about 1/4 inch. So grab a fillet knife. If you don't have a fillet knife, either go buy one or just use whatever knife you have and be as careful as possible. And what we want to do is we want to shave that fat off to expose some of that fat underneath. Make sure you have your offhand glove and you keep your other hand nice and clean. Why am I talking in that voice? I don't know, but we're just going to keep going. So what you're going to get on the edges here is you're going to get a lot of this stringy fat right here. You don't want that ended up in your mouth. So we're going to go ahead and just cut that off. Put it over to the side. Save that. You can render that. Use it for beef tallow. Make all kinds of good stuff with that. So go ahead and just keep on trimming. So what you're going to get is some silver skin coming in right here. And we want to take that off. So we're just going to shave very gently because that silver skin's right against the meat. And we just kind of want to gently take that off. Sometimes you can do this with a paring knife. You can do this with a regular chef knife. I just like using a fillet knife because I only get to flex about a couple things in my life, and this is one of them. Okay, take all of that off. We also want to take off most of the fat on this side of the meat, since this is where most of your bark is going to end up being. The two motions you can make while you're actually carving through is you can saw through gently, and I'll kind of bring this over here so you can see this. You can either saw through the meat just like this. You want to push and then pull. Or what I like to do is to come here and just make one motion through the meat. Save yourself a lot of time and effort. And you're thinking to yourself, but Eric, trimming meat's not that hard. There's still people that can't do it. Why else would people make these videos? Well, me personally, it's because I have nothing better to do. So right here in the tri-tip, this is an important part. This section right here, you're going to have a lot of hard fat that's pretty nasty to eat. And you want to get out as much as you can. So I like to take the tip of my knife right here, start right here on the tri-tip, bring it down, cut here, then take that same tip, push down, cut through. And what you're going to get is most of that fat right there. If you have a good butcher, he can take care of this for you. But typically, you want the end of the tri-tip looking like that. We're smoking it for a long time, so we don't want this skinny point right here. We're just going to cut that straight off. That's our end cut right there. An important thing to remember when we're right here is pay attention to the grain of the meat before you cook it. Because when we get into slicing, this is going to be very important. Typically on the skinnier side of your tri-tip, it's going to be running longwise. But as you can see, it goes from here, and when you get to the thicker side, it kind of switches. If you don't cut across the grain in these sections, you're going to be wondering why it's so chewy and dense. So pay attention to the grain of your tri-tip while you're trimming it down. Okay, now that we got this all trimmed up and ready to go, we're going to go ahead and get the seasoning. So now that we got this all trimmed up, let's jump right into seasoning. What I've got here is my own personal rub. It's a mix of salt, pepper, a little bit of garlic, some other stuff in there. You can use whatever beef rub you want, whatever you might use for brisket, or if you've never cooked a brisket before, just find something that you think will taste good. Don't be shy. Feel free to be generous with it. You know, it's a relatively short cook compared to most other low and slow meats, but anything you're putting on here is going to contribute to having a nice bark, a lot of flavor, and you really don't need a binder with it. You can go ahead and just kind of shake that thing on there. Again, I'm not looking for a lot, but I'm still going to make sure that we get nice even coverage here. And make sure whatever you leave on the board, you kind of want to rub that back into the meat. Sometimes you want to use your hand for the sides. That way you can kind of press it back in. Tri-tip's got a lot of surfaces, a lot of angles. Sometimes it's a little tough to season, but just make sure you get a little bit on there. Okay, so now we're going to do the fat cap side. Now with the fat cap, because you're typically going to be cooking this down, you don't need as much, because this is where it's going to be facing most of the heat. Just nice even coverage is what we're looking for. Now we got this all seasoned up. We're gonna go ahead and let this sit. You don't need to go super long. I would say max is about 30 minutes. I typically let mine sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. While that's sitting, we're gonna go ahead and start up our pellet smoker. You can do this on a kettle. You can do it on a Kamado. You can do it on an offset. The temperature you wanna aim for is about 250 to 275. So once that's set, go ahead and drop it in there. We're going to see a cook time of about 45 minutes to an hour per pound. And being that it's not a large cut, it should cook pretty fast. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. So now our smoker's getting all warmed up. We're going to go ahead and get our thermometer set up. Now, you got a couple options on how you want to track temperature. What I like to use is a wireless thermometer. My smoker has probes built into it, but I like to have something that I can use remotely. So that tends to be the meter setup right here. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take the probe and we're gonna go thick side of the meat. We wanna make sure that we're hitting the middle of where this side and this side meets right here. Go ahead and press it in. You can also check this periodically with an instant read thermometer. I like to use ThermoPro. It's cheap, it's accurate, tends to work well. When you're checking temperature with the ThermoPro, what you want to do is make sure you're just aiming right here for the middle of the meat. That's all. So now that our smoker has got everything going, we're gonna get it thrown in, and we're gonna get good to go. But come here real quick, I want to tell you something. There's a big argument whether about if you're supposed to wrap these or if you're supposed to let them go naked. Now, personally, I don't like to wrap. I get a better bark out of it. I feel like you get better flavor. You can wrap it. That tends to give you a little bit more tender product. You get some of the au jus out of it. It's up to you. If you got extra time, I'd say go unwrapped, but try it both ways. You know, if you get them on sale and you get them cheap, try it out. See what works best for you. That's all that matters. The most important thing is you want the fat going towards the source of your heat. If you're on a pellet grill like we are, you want to go fat side down. If you're on an offset smoker, you want that fat up. So let's go ahead and let's get this thing on there. So we got our tri-tip here on the grill, and now we get to do the fun part, and that's wait. Okay, hang on. I don't know what my arms have to do with it. I'm trying to stretch my mouth. We've been on for about 5 hours. We just hit 201 internal. So we're gonna go ahead and take our tri-tip off the smoker now. We're gonna go ahead and tent it. Give me a minute. So normally with the brisket, you want to leave it wrapped and leave it in a cooler. With a tri-tip, because it's such a small cut and you're not dealing with as much connective tissue, you can simply just tent it. And typically you only want to tent it for about 30 minutes. So you get some aluminum foil and go ahead and just kind of drape it loosely across in both directions. And we're gonna let this sit here for about 30 minutes. So if you wanted to prep any sides or sauces at this point, this is kind of your perfect time to do it. So just let this sit here for about 30 minutes, and after that's done, we can go ahead and take the foil off and we'll be ready to slice and serve. Okay, so we've been resting for about 30 minutes. We're about ready to slice here, so go ahead and just take your foil away. Now, if you remember what I said earlier, it's very important to slice this against the grain and to pay attention to the grain of the meat on the actual cut, because they do not run the same way. So the easiest way to remember this, come over here, is lengthwise, you're gonna cut this way. On this side, you're gonna cut this way. So here's a little trick for you. I take my slicer, I just take a simple cut right here and go straight through. Here's the fun part. You see that smoke ring right there? Tell me that doesn't look like a brisket. So, like I said, we're gonna go against the grain. So you can just nice, even little slices. You're gonna get a ton of juice coming out on the board. But typically what I'll do is I'll really only slice this when I'm ready to serve. But this passes a bend test just like a piece of brisket. Easily pulls apart. We're ready to eat, baby. Let's do this.
Thanks for dropping by today. If you'd like to see the recipe or check out what else we have cooking, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. You can find our recipes and tips on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media sites, and also at www.grillslingers.com. If you have an idea for what we can do next, or think you can beat us at cornhole, drop a comment and name a date and time. That's all for today. We'll see you next time.